And let's start our conversation about the recent strike of
Yeah.
the drones in the targets. Actually, there were more two locations, one in Moscow and one in Crimea.
Mm-hmm.
What's very significant about it, and for us here, we don't usually get involved in, yes, I did read up on the nature of the drone, the type of, that's to
Yeah.
me is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Why is that? It's because you have to understand the implications of an action like this on the global
Right.
stage. That's why I never focus too much on, yes, it would be nice to know, for everybody to know, okay, what type of drones and all that.
Yeah.
But to me, I look at it like, this one has much more geopolitical implications than just focusing on the nature of
Absolutely.
the drone and all that. So, and what makes it, in my opinion, as geopolitical analyst, what makes it a very complicated issue now? Because you're going to ask the question,
Mm-hmm.
does Ukraine have that kind of capabilities, first of all, to conduct an
Right.
op like that? That's one. Second, if not, who's behind it?
That's a great question.
Yeah. And the third question, what is the objective?
Yeah.
Because apparently, which we all know by now, you guys, it's not a surprise or a
Mm-hmm.
secret to you that Ukraine cannot make decisions. Ukraine is being told what to do and not to do. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, which it was info that I got in Washington that was swept under the rug quickly,
Mm-hmm.
because if you know how it works for our government, and this is the reason why we're going to be doing the course on the government. You'll
Absolutely.
talk about this later on, but the decision always made at night.
Yep.
One recent decision was just made on Saturday evening.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to pay attention to the news on Saturday?
Exactly. On
So,
Saturday Eve,
yeah,
you're absolutely right. The timing of important stuff is always during a
yeah.
holiday while something else is going on, or in the evening.
Exactly. So to tie this one back to this Ukraine thing, it was that the US did tell Ukraine, do not target inside Russia. But no media took that up.
Yep.
No coverage was made. And that's where I say, you're going to ask the questions, the three main
Yeah.
questions. So who directed
Yeah.
the op to begin with? Now, there is the much bigger question that loom large. Now, by targeting civilians, those are
Yeah.
civilian targets, not
Yeah.
a military targets. You need to know the distinctions when it comes down to the rule of engagements.
Right.
It's very, very, very important.
So, and this is an interesting thing, because when I looked at the way that the Moscow Times was relaying this information,
Mhm.
what they said is that they had downed the drones targeting Moscow and Crimea, and that's what happened, right? So
Yeah.
they were either shot down or they were suppressed by electronic warfare, which,
Some of them did. But another word for that, just
Right.
for average people to know the basic language, is they've been jammed.
Yes.
How do you jam it? Is through signals.
Right.
We used to have them in the military. We could jam the communications for the enemy.
Yeah.
And you jam it. So
it just sounds cooler to say
yeah.
electronic
Electronic
warfare.
warfare. It's basically jamming it.
Jam the
Yeah,
drones,
you're right.
and it smashed into an office complex.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear the differences in the narrative from what happened, right?
Yeah.
So the Moscow Times is saying, we downed this, and this is why, we were the winners. We are the ones who made this happen.
Yeah.
But is that true?
Well, actually, there is a problem with that. That is a problem for Russia, that if a drone that violated the airspace to begin with, that's a big concern.
Right,
And
right.
knowing how the Russian radar systems work, how this something like this was able to slip through.
That's
But again,
a great question.
those are for the technical aspects, which we're
Mhm.
not going to be focusing on. We could talk about it, except we would need
Yeah.
about 2 or 3 hours to cover
Right.
that, and we're not going to do that. But rather, just to present the big picture. And the big
Yeah.
picture, again, in addition to the question I asked, is now, are we entering a different phase of the conflict?
That's the biggest question. And if you want, I can show you guys a video of this. Video was circulating around the internet. A video of the drone attack
Yeah.
itself or the crash itself, I think it's worth taking a look at. But I think really you're right that the big question is, what are the bigger implications of this? Because what happened afterwards is now we're starting to get talks of nuclear war. Now we're starting to get talks of, here, let me show this before we dive into
Yeah.
this, because
Yeah. Let's do that.
I think it's worth I think it's worth checking out. Add it. All right, let's take a look. So it was,
Yeah, it's well, it will be scary to civilians
of
and see
course.
that. As a matter of fact, the foreign ministry of Russia did issue a statement
Mhm.
that they compare this to 9/11, which was like,
Oh, no,
oh no, 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 no,
no.
no.
No,
As a
no,
matter of
no.
fact, the Kremlin
Yeah.
came later recently. I
Yeah.
On my way here, I just confirmed
Yeah.
that one. The Kremlin came forward and said, no, the foreign ministry was wrong in its statement.
I'm
So they
very
called
glad.
them
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I'm glad. I'm glad.
9/11 is another conversation
Completely.
altogether. So
Completely.
the question becomes now that the targeted civilian location,
Mhm.
how this is now is gonna change the course. Well,
Right.
again, as an analyst, I am thinking this now will put a decisive decision for Russia.
Yeah.
It's now or never. What do I mean by that? It's now or never to end
Yeah.
this once for all.
Well, so give me your opinion on this, because this I agree with you. And the escalations that we're hearing now
Yeah.
come out of Sergei Lavrov, and then there's something that came out of Dmitry Medvedev's.
Yeah.
He has a
Medvedev.
Medvedev. Oh my
Medvedev.
gosh.
Yeah.
He has oh my gosh, what is it account?
Because he's the head of the national security for Russia.
Right.
So
So he has said, imagine if the offensive, which is backed by NATO, was a success and they tore off part of our land and we would be forced to use a nuclear weapon according to the rules of a decree from the president of Russia.
it's because in Russian doctrine,
Mm-hmm.
anytime the territory of the Russian Federation comes under threat,
Mm-hmm.
they automatically will use nuclear weapon.
Yep.
To them, that's how they put it. For us, we put the first strike.
Yeah.
Remember, it's known. I wrote about it in my book, known in Russia as ADU, A2AD,
Mm-hmm.
A2AD, alpha to alpha delta. That's how it's known in the Russian doctrine, which
Yeah.
basically, in a simple language, guys, just not to confuse you with this terminology, it's just basically it is decreed in
Mm-hmm.
the Russian doctrine, military one that is, if the Russian Federation as a state is threatened, like what
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
happened,
Yeah.
they reserve the right to deploy nuclear weapons against the target where that drone came from.
Right.
So,
And so now we're seeing that. I mean, that's what you're talking
yeah,
about the larger implication is, that is the problem. The problem isn't necessarily this drone strike, because it didn't, I think there
no,
was only one injury. I mean,
yeah,
it didn't really hit anybody. The problem is that it escalated because now it's on Russian soil.
yeah, is the significance of it. Like I
Right.
always say, in international relations, context matters.
Yeah.
The fact that it's been reported in Western media that Moscow has been attacked.
Right.
Yeah, it was a drone. It didn't cause much. Yeah, it was.
Right.
It was physical damage to the building and all that. All that won't matter. What it matters is that headlines that states Moscow is under attack. Whatever.
Right.
And this is where Russia is gonna now retaliate forcefully. So here's the thing: if
Yep.
they don't,
Right.
that opens the gate for more.
Yep.
And that leads me to my first question: who was behind this?
Yep.
Because Ukraine can't do this on its own. Ukraine doesn't have the capabilities. As a matter of fact, I became aware of a recent contract believe it
Mhm.
or not, for the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, that they signed the contract with none other than Turkey.
Big,
Big problem.
big, big,
Big
big
problem.
problem. Yep.
Turkey, in my opinion, is playing both sides.
Yeah.
That reminds me of India.
Yep.
No offense to India, whatever, but
Yeah.
because I'll say the same about Turkey. Turkey is playing both sides.
Mhm.
Turkey, it's almost you feel like one of those opportunists,
Yeah.
politically speaking.
Yeah.
So it becomes the question, you want to build a good relation, you as Turkey want to build a good relations with Russia,
Yeah.
and behind the scenes you're going and sending, because one of those there is a name for I got the name for the type of drones
Mhm.
that's by the way, the drone, it's called Ukraine's Beaver. That's a weird name. So
Um,
that's how
uh,
uh
very
so
imposing. Very imposing name,
yeah.
the beaver.
So there's the idea of Turkey now entering into these dimensions of and I have it right here.
Mhm.
Let me share it with you guys, or read it to you guys so you know. It says and I quote here. So the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense revealed today,
Mhm.
as I was walking here, the signing of an agreement with the Turkish company Baykar Makina.
Yeah.
That's the company, Baykar Makina. That's the one that specialized in drone technologies, to establish a center in Ukraine
Mhm.
for repair and maintenance operations. As a matter of fact, Russia confirmed
Interesting.
this.
Yeah.
Russian President Putin confirmed this, that this the plant they are building
Yeah.
will be completed by 2025. So this is what's problematic. As a matter of fact, I'm going to share with you guys the image because you need to see. Picture one.
It's coming.
Yeah, it is coming. All right, here's the picture of it. Picture one. Right there.
Oh.
Yeah. This is the that's representative of Turkey and the ones
Mhm.
from Ukraine. So that is what's now a problematic. So, and that becomes the question of and now we should be fair also.
Yeah.
Russia also acquired drones from Iran.
Right.
So
Right.
you
Right.
gotta call
Right.
spade a spade.
Yeah.
So you can just see. It's almost I'm reminded historically of the Iran-Iraq war.
Yeah.
Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because we were supplying to both sides.
Yeah. Well, and
So
I think it's interesting because that is something that is actually a regular occurrence where,
yeah,
we have one hand on obvious conflict of interest in
yeah.
a lot of circumstances. I think there's a movie called what is it, Lord of War, where
Oh yeah.
basically, this has been going on forever, where it's like basically one country, one dealer is supplying arms to both
Both
sides,
sides.
right?
Yeah.
So this is just a little bit more out in the open, I think, than most countries do it. But this isn't a new phenomena. This isn't a
Yeah.
new thing. There was a lot of backlash when, BlackRock, for example, BlackRock got the contracts to rebuild Ukraine when they have massive shares in, the people that are the companies that are arming Ukraine.
Yeah.
So it's been very interesting to watch, as these things sort of come to light more, that we have countries, we have places that are arming both sides.
Both sides. Yeah.
And so then you have to ask the question, what is the war really about? What is the conflict really about? Why has there been this escalation? Because we saw the bridge. So there was the bridge escalation that happened, what, a week ago, a week and a half ago?
Yeah. That's
And now, which was civilian. I mean, the bridge is strategically militarily important, but it was a civilian use bridge. And now we have this circumstance where, regardless of whether it was shot down or that was where it was supposed to be going, what ended up being hit was a civilian area.
Yeah.
And so what is the point? Because even the White House has come out and basically said that Ukraine's counteroffensive is not
working.
is not working.
No.
And so what would be the point if Ukraine's counteroffensive is not working? And even the US government said it's not really working. What is the point of having this attack? Because this wasn't a giant attack. It wasn't something huge and crazy.
Yeah.
This was a couple of drones basically starting to try to start a fire.
Well, that will be like a bait for the Russians. So I'm sure Putin will be smart enough to know how far to go, because if Russia deploys the nukes
Right.
on Ukraine, it's a problematic.
Well,
It's
so to me,
very problematic.
absolutely. And I
So,
think that that's true. And I
so
wonder if it's a testing of how far Putin will go. Because when you look at things like that, these things, like you always say, they don't happen in a
no. I go
vacuum.
back in your statement. Not
Okay.
how far Putin will go, how far NATO can push.
Yes, I
That's
agree.
two
I
different
agree.
things. Yes.
I agree.
Because the push, where it's coming from, it's not, yes, the react, which one you're going to evaluate first,
Right.
the action or the reaction?
Absolutely.
See
And
what
I
I mean?
think they're
Yeah.
interested in the reaction.
Yeah. Well, yeah, to the degree, but also to see how far, which
Right.
reaction, how far they can
Right.
push it. And this is why it will be problematic if Russia will deploy the tactical nukes. I don't see them doing that. What I do see going is that the next operation Russia is going to conduct, it will be very poignant, very powerful.
Well,
So
that's interesting.
that's the way I see it. I don't know what it is,
Yeah.
but I can see how forceful it's going to be. That will be like, this is almost like our final message.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Well,
That's the way I see it.
Okay, I'm interested in this because to me, it's chess moves, right?
That's
All
correct.
of conflict is chess moves. And we look at it as the narrative. Well, I mean, not us, but overall people look at it as the narrative of like, oh, we're winning or they're losing or whatever, but it's not that simple.
Yeah.
It's chess moves, and mostly they're moves happening behind the scenes that we don't know anything about. And so to me, every single time something like this happens,
Yeah.
it's another move. It's another move. It's another move. And what is the intention behind the move?
Well, one of the things is, it's of course to prolong the conflict. That's one. That's a given.
Yeah.
But also you have to take that within the context of other events taking place on the global stage.
Yeah.
You take, for example, the current recent Russia-Africa summit that took place in St. Petersburg.
Yes. Yep.
You take also this within the context of the recent initiative by Saudi Arabia to break a deal between Russia and Ukraine.
Yep.
All of a sudden, we in the West are saying, oh, it's good that Saudi Arabia. How come we didn't say that when China initiated it?
Right.
I don't see the Saudis going into that, because first of all, Russia doesn't even know about this.
Yeah.
Saudis wants to do that for relevancy, to stay relevant. It's because Saudis are going a different direction altogether. But we promised them to sign a security pact with them only if they agree to normalize relations with Israel. I don't see that happening. You got hardliners in Saudis. I wrote a book on Saudi Arabia. I worked there, so I'm a very, very familiar with the Saudi thinking, politically speaking. The hardliners, religiously speaking, the monarchy, just FYI, guys, the monarchy in Saudi Arabia has a deal with the religious establishment.
Yeah.
They won't cross them. And this normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel is red line.
Yeah.
Because you will have a hardliners and the monarchy cannot afford that.
Yeah.
This is nothing new, by the way. This deal between the religious establishments and the monarchy was established back in the early 30s.
Jeez.
That's how far back.
So we're looking at 100 years more.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little bit less.
It's been
but
established that way. I detailed all this in my my Saudi book, and that was the reason why the monarchy survived all these years.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people in the West have no idea about it.
Because a lot of monarchies have not survived.
Yeah.
Or have transformed into something else. But
Exactly.
You're absolutely right.
Now, there is another very security concern from this potential deal between hypothetically Saudis and the US regarding security protection
Yeah.
is that we will provide them the Iron Dome. Well,
Yes.
Iron Dome, Iran is not going to be happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Saudis just got a deal with Iran. So I don't see them though. So this whole initiative of breaking a sort of a negotiating a deal between Russia and
Yeah.
Ukraine, it's not gonna work. Now, before I forget,
Mm-hmm.
it could only work in one condition, and one condition only. And I could be wrong,
Okay.
but this is my own analysis.
Yeah.
Is that it was the U.S. initiated through the Saudis because we want an end
Oh.
to it.
Oh, that's so interesting.
That's the way I see it.
Okay, that's very and that's because to me it doesn't necessarily make sense that the Saudis basically
All of
said
a sudden.
right, all of a sudden that doesn't make
Yeah.
sense to me.
So we won't lose face.
Right.
Let the Saudis,
Right.
they are allies, push them first. We hitting two stones with one bird.
Yeah.
We amending relations with the Saudis,
Yeah.
but we also trying to find a way out of this
Yeah.
conflict.
That's so
That's the way I
interesting
see it.
because I think the reality is
Yeah.
that the narrative has absolutely fallen apart.
Oh yeah.
The narrative is
It won't hold.
It just did, and it didn't.
It won't
And
hold.
I wonder if, because we did Afghanistan for so long,
Yeah.
and Iraq also. I mean, it was so long because we did it for so long. I wonder if basically they thought that people were going to stay blind
Yeah.
to what was happening with
Yeah.
the Ukraine-Russia conflict for
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah. You know why I'm laughing?
Right?
You know why I'm laughing?
Why?
I'm laughing because we just had a meeting with the group in Afghanistan
Mm-hmm.
after 20 years.
I know.
We don't use the term
I
here,
know
right?
we can't
We
because
can't.
YouTube
Yeah, by the
doesn't
way,
like
we got
it.
like
Yeah.
censored on that.
Yeah.
We just had a meeting with them
Yeah.
in Doha. I mean,
Oh, God.
almost 20
I
years
know,
there, and
20
we
years,
just
yeah.
had a meeting with them.
Yeah.
And it tells you nothing changed.
Right.
So this is why I'm laughing, not out of being
No,
funny.
out
It's
of
laughing out
how
of
terrible it is, actually.
I was there and I saw
Yeah.
how pathetic
Yeah.
for us to be engaged in a conflict that there is no way we can win that.
Right.
No other power won it. That's why they called Afghanistan a graveyard of the empire
Yeah.
for a reason.
Right.
Historically speaking,
Right.
the Brits couldn't do it. The Ottomans couldn't do it.
Right.
The Soviet Union couldn't do it. What made us think that we could do that?
Well, here's the thing. I think they didn't think that they could do it.
Yeah,
I think really the people who wanted it to keep going.
going for sure.
And that's interestingly enough when the Ukraine and Russia conflict started.
Yeah.
It was, Ukraine is going to win. Well,
Oh yeah, right.
Here's the deal. We don't have it in the plans for it to win.
Yeah.
Right? The plans are to keep it going to 2025, 2026.
Yeah.
That's not winning.
That's
and
true.
what is the benefit to winning, and what would winning even actually look like?
Yeah.
So the narrative absolutely, you're right. I mean, the narrative just absolutely fell apart in that conflict. And so I do think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, I think
if that were the case.
That is the reason. That's me putting my
Yeah,
geopolitical
yeah.
analyst hat on. I can just see it.
Well, interestingly enough, China also tried to broker this deal.
We didn't want it because we didn't want
Right.
it to come from non-US ally,
Right.
either in the Western world or even in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Well, who is in the Middle East? You got two countries,
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia and Jordan.
Well, Jordan's
Egypt,
not gonna. So.
Jordan got their own issues, whatever. So
But
it becomes the
who-
question.
Who else just got really close to the Saudis?
Egypt.
China.
Oh, I mean, I'm sorry. Say it again.
So what I'm thinking is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But since China couldn't do it, China's also started to get really close to the Saudis.
Yeah, but China has its own reasons for that. It's energy, access to energy, both with Saudi Arabia and Iran.
Yeah.
But the aim is not just at that. The aim is the BRI.
Yes, absolutely.
So
the BRI is a
yeah.
big deal.
Because a lot of voices now
Mhm.
have been expressed as to adding both Saudi Arabia and Iran to the BRICS.
Yeah.
Get rid of India
Yeah.
and put those two.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And economically, that would be a very interesting
it would
change
be.
because India is a very large market, but they are not known
No,
for exports.
India will be useless for, it is
Yeah.
useless for BRICS. I'll say straightforward. But China has also an aim with
Yeah.
Saudis being there.
Yeah.
Because which currency we use for oil transactions?
Dollar, right? Which one will they be using? Is that what you're asking?
Well, they will be using the BRICS currency.
Right.
And who's backed by which currency? The yuan.
Yeah.
So, and Saudis have gold.
Yep.
Iran has gold. China has gold.
Russia has
Russia
gold
has
too.
gold. You can just see. So, and this is why, just to go back to our topic before we jump on the next one, is the idea of all these dynamics. They are intertwined.
Yep.
And because the meeting that took place in St. Petersburg between Russia and Africa was very significant.
Yeah.
I looked at the map. I wish I could have pulled up. Only 3 countries didn't attend. How many countries are in Africa? You got about 54.
Yeah.
Only 3.
Yeah. Well, Russia, and you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it speaks volume right there.
Yep.
So because Russia sees the new geopolitical landscape.
Right.